All right, welcome to another Thursday night. And tonight I just want to talk. I want to just see what you guys want to talk about. Have basically a Q&A, but I might ask you questions as well. So I'll give you a chance first. Do you have a topic or a question? I don't know much about roofs, so I can't help you. Yes, sir.
I was thinking after the last class, we were talking about consciousness. And I always try to put things into a certain perspective about, how tiny we are on the planet Earth compared to the rest of the universe. And if Earth disappeared, we are so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And I started looking into that online, and I realized that consciousness cannot be measured by space and time. It completely transcends it. But at the same time, consciousness is not part of our instincts as human beings for some reason. It's just, like some people just go through their whole lives having no clue about things. I just want to get your perspective on that, sir.
Okay, I have to hit mute. Years ago, for a short time, I did sales. My main priority was always teaching martial arts. And so in the early days back around college, I would pick up some odd jobs. And I would do sales, a little bit of, like I go in from place to place and basically be selling, and we meet a lot of different people. And one of the people I met was from South America. I forget, it was Brazil or something. And he had a twin sister. She was there, he was here. So I asked him, because of experience that I had in that regard, space, time, distance, same thing. I asked him, you ever have any experiences with your sister that you knew something was wrong before anybody told you so? And he said one time he actually said many times, but one time really stood out, that he had this terrible abdominal pain. And he would be like, went to his knees and couldn't understand what was wrong with him. And apparently he called his sister and found out that she had some serious abdominal problem and she was being hospitalized. So nothing physically wrong with him, but he ended up on his knees and feeling the pain that she was experiencing. And how many miles is that? How many thousands of miles apart were they? Maybe you've had the similar experience. It's countless for me. It's beyond strange to me. It's like normal for me. Someone pops in my head and then they call. They come to my mind. Maybe I haven't thought of them in months. And then they call that day, usually that day. And there's people who I'm just closer with in this lifetime. They call that day. It's like we have an absolute connection, and there's no thought otherwise. I don't believe in coincidences. If you're paying attention, you'll notice that, certainly there's coincidences, but I don't believe in coincidences the way it's assumed, like, oh, that's just a coincidence and anything can happen. It's just random occurrences. No. How does somebody pop in my head the day that they call when I didn't think of them for weeks or months before that? Many times, and I want you to think about yourself, think about your own life, because absolutely 100% I'm not special. something my teacher would always say, 2 arms, 2 legs, what's different? And that goes for Bagua, that goes for martial arts, that goes for self-defense, that goes for any skill. If someone can do it, you can do it. Now, I'm not talking about somebody who's setting records in the Olympics. This is human limits. Now, not everybody can do that, but just the basic concept that we are all very capable. So when someone has intuition, we all have intuition. But many times as children, it's been shot down because parents have no experience with that. A lot of times religion has poo-poos towards it. It's evil, or the church is taught it's the devil, or it's somewhat ridiculous things. And one of my teachers many years ago said that the Salem witch trials, the witches were Qigong masters. Like, these are normal human developments on a more spiritual level that people would call witches, and they'd burn them, right? According to the stories. And so all over the world, there's been things like that. I've personally done out-of-body experiences. I've had, there's nobody can tell me that I wasn't out of my body, because I actually was able to go to another place and see what's there. And then later in my body, I go look, and then there it is. So how does that happen? How do people have out-of-body experiences where they see maybe themselves in surgery, right? They actually float up. I've done a lot of meditation that way. I've led people that way, and they told me that after, like, I led like a, what do you call that? Guided meditation. And we had a group of people on the floor in the dojang, and I was talking them through the whole thing. And the stories I got afterwards were so amazing. People that they were actually with, meaning it was like a real experience in the physical body with people that passed in their lives. And it was an incredible, realistic experience for them. And a lot of times in those experiences, you don't make anything happen. Like, that person that maybe is past comes to you on their own because you've opened yourself to it. Now, where do we go when we die? Some things I won't go into, but we really have no idea about the universe. Everything we've heard could be a total farce. I'm just putting it out there. I've seen enough research and things that disprove a lot of what we consider facts, but I'll leave it at that. Meaning, you think, well, let me put it this way, in the way you put it. If the earth, excuse me, if the earth suddenly disappeared, your mind is like, it's a speck of dust in the universe. It's nothing. So we're nothing. We're insignificant, completely insignificant. And how do we know that's true at all? If you carefully read the Bible, it speaks very differently about that. So if you believe the Bible is true, then that thought can't be true. They can't have both. Just food for thought. But thinking that we are meaningless speck of dust in the universe really takes away from who or what we really are. In other words, we are the consciousness of God. We are God experiencing through our lives. Whether you're a bug or a bird or a human being, you're God, the consciousness of God, seeing through that. And to say we're insignificant belittles it all. There have been amazing studies. Look up remote viewing. And this was even intelligence agencies, Russian studies, where they can actually spy remotely through the mind. They're fed sort of a location, and they go there, in their mind, and then they describe or draw things that are there, and then when they pull a picture up of what they drew. No. When they pull a picture up of the location, it's what the person drew who never left the room. So how can space or time have anything to do with interfering with that? It can't. And some of these people were so good that they would draw things in such detail that you would think they went there and they saw it. Strange things in this world. And they seem so strange because we've got stuck in the physical. When I was studying Native American related stuff, they got to the spiritual level. And if you read about some of the native people, in a lot of these villages, it was normal. Well, let's see, I think of an example. So there's a group sitting around, I don't know, just imagine playing some little game or something, or just talking. And then one just gets up and starts jogging away. And if a stranger, a visitor from the West sees that, they say, what happened? Where'd he go? Did we offend him? And someone else there answers, no, his mother was calling him. Like, I didn't hear anything. And they laugh and they say, no, you don't need to speak. You just know. And to them, it's completely normal. What is that? We think we're so smart, but we have incredibly reduced ourselves, limited ourselves because of beliefs in things that may not be true at all. There's a saying now, belief is the enemy of knowing. How many things do you actually know? How many things do you actually know are true through your own experience? Or do you just believe what you've been told? In other words, it comes to mind a comic skit I saw not too long ago. They were making fun of this religious zealot, saying that you believe in some book that was written by men thousands of years ago that you never met, you never saw write it, you have no idea where they got the information or what their intention was. And then this guy turns around and does the same thing to them with their science. You believe in the books that people wrote, hundreds of years ago. It's like, this is your science and this is acceptable, but this is God or spirit or religion, and it's not acceptable to you. And yet we can both make the same argument. And if you actually have critical thinking, you start to realize, what the heck is true? You stop trusting anybody anymore. In other words, we trust so many things that are true, and that, and to this point today, it's able to divide us because you believe who you believe, as if they know something you don't, and they could be completely have a different motive. They want you to think a certain way. They want you to be full of fear all the time, and they want to control you, and you have no idea of that because you just trust and you believe. So it's funny how some people have such faith in one thing and such disbelief in something else, and they don't even know neither one is more valid by proof. You just believe this one, don't believe that one. Maybe because the people you believe in tell you that's not true, and they could be lying. Even history is a lie agreed upon. History written by the victors. All these little sayings. Do we really know anything about what's true? Another question. But I just will back up a little bit. Your question was about vastness of the universe and the time and space. When I'm saying we don't even really know how much space there is, when you say outer space and the vastness of the universe, we don't have any idea what that is. There's a song that says, The stars are closer. There's something with the words, the stars are closer. It's like, are they as far as they tell you are? How many light years away? And if there are so many thousands of hundreds of thousands of light years away, how can we possibly see them with our eyes? Something's not right. I can't tell you what's true 100%, but I can tell you what we've been told and what we've been sold is not. Something's not right. And we need to do more critical thinking. Here's a crazy thought. There was a woman interviewed in a nursing home. 103, I think she is now. She was in school in the 20s, early 30s. Do you know what they said the shape of the earth was? Flat. Now we're told, historically, hundreds of years ago, they figured out the earth was round. And yet this woman in school in the United States, in Connecticut, learned that the earth was flat in the 20s. And then through school in the mid-30s, they changed it. And nobody questioned that. They just said, oh, science figured things out and they're advancing and they know more. But doesn't that go completely against how long ago we figured that out? That is a real head scratcher. What the heck is true historically? How do we know so many things we've heard about were completely fabricated and made up in order to create a certain belief or narrative to make you think you're nothing but a speck of dust in the universe that's meaningless, and if the earth disappeared, it would make no difference whatsoever? Isn't that interesting? Food for thought. Another question. Yes, sir, Mr.
Villas.
And Tomate first. Oh, you already unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Have you ever noticed that you can't see the dark side of the moon? Like you could never see
Here
it.
we go. Here we go.
No, like,
So, yeah, it never changes.
No. But I don't understand, because it says it keeps up with the spin of the earth. So if that were the case, wouldn't like China be able to see the dark side of the moon then? Like, I was thinking about that recently, because every full moon I go out and look at it with the telescope, but it doesn't make sense why you can't see it.
Have you ever seen the lunar wave?
What's that?
So there are people who just leave the telescope and they record it for hours and hours and hours on end.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like water, like a ripple goes through the moon, almost like a video game getting reset.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they put it on the internet, it got censored and taken off. Now I think you can find it again. But
who is that? Crow 777?
Yeah, he was the first one, I think, but other people since. So
I gotta look it up.
You never saw that?
No.
Okay, so this is a good question about what is true, what is real. You're asking about the dark side of the moon. Nobody's ever seen it because all we see is the same on the same side, and it always looks exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't turn at all.
No.
Explain
and also, it rises at very, various times. Like last month, the full moon was at, like 9 o'clock, and then the next day it didn't rise till like 11. So that I don't quite understand either. Whereas the sun's usually pretty consistent,
If you actually research these things, you start scratching your head. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. No.
That's why I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole here, except that something you might think is completely insane, all of a sudden it's like, wow, why is that?
No. Thank you. I'll look up the Lunar Wave.
Well, he has a movie shoot the moon.
Hmm.
But I don't know how easy it is to see it. Look on his show.
If you have a
777.
subscription, you could see it.
Okay, so
I
you know
gotta
about it.
look into that.
Look
Yeah.
into it. It's worth it
Mhm.
because you get a lot more information. And the reason for a subscription is because they get so censored. They
Yeah.
always have to watch what they say on their podcast because they get blocked. They get
Yeah,
they
the
get
second hour is when he actually says like the stuff you want to hear.
So my instincts is, why are you so afraid of this information? If it's
Mhm.
BS, don't worry about it. Prove them wrong.
Oh yeah, because
Why
there's
are you gonna
plenty of
censor it?
content. There's plenty of bad
Censorship.
content on the internet, but they don't
Exactly.
censor that.
But my point is, not just him, everybody, all these hundreds of people now getting censored. Why? What the heck? Who's in charge and so afraid of information? Are they
Mhm.
telling something they don't want you to know? Because that's what my mind thinks. I don't know what's true either way. And I'm saying, why do you got to block that? Why can't
Mhm.
I figure out what's true and not true? Why can't I do my own research? So that's troublesome to me. That
Mhm.
someone has to watch every word they say.
And if you look at all those dystopian novels from like 1984 to Fahrenheit 451, it was all about censoring people and limiting speech to limit the ideas, because eventually, if you don't have the words to describe your thoughts, you eliminate the ideas. So I think that's what they're really getting at.
I don't disagree.
And then you got the big screens like in Fahrenheit 451 that are just, taking your attention away, and you're just like a zombie,
So this goes back to over the last few weeks, if not a few months, where it's came up a few times. Who are you trusting? What are you watching? What is it doing to you?
Mhm.
Are you even aware? Because brainwashing and mind control can happen on such a subtle, unconscious, subconscious level that you have no idea that your beliefs have been implanted in you. This is just fact. You have no idea that what you think is real and what you think is true and what you think is also popular has been planted in you by psychologists who understand how the mind works. And this goes back 100 years at least, if not more. That if they keep pounding enough, what was that? Subliminal messaging. They used to make you buy popcorn at movies. When they drive in movies, they would
Let's
flash.
all go to the lobby.
You see? They know it works. They know how to do it. And now they can intertwine it in movies and TV shows and in the news by repeating something. I've seen newscasts where every channel, every show had the exact same lines. They have no originality at all. They're just saying the exact same thing. That's a little scary. That means there's one source that wrote that line and put it into all the sources.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're awake, you recognize that. And whether it's true, not true, it should make you question. Why is that? And if you're not questioning, then I do believe you're asleep.
And just to touch on that, something I noticed before I moved that really bothered me was in the city now, they have all the kiosks that have the, screens that flash in front of your eyes, and in the subway they had them. And all the advertisements now aren't just like the old billboards, they all flash. So you're constantly it kind of takes away your attention span because things keep flashing. So I feel like the devices are limiting people's ability to concentrate for a prolonged period of time. Even with like the apps like TikTok and, dopamine, all those things, you're looking at a very short clip, and it's rewiring your brain to not be able to focus on something long term.
Dopamine, serotonin, all of these endorphins, all these neurotransmitters, they know how to control them. They know how to make them basically drug you so you feel a certain way. They can create that now. They know how to create that. And that's a scary thing. If you're completely unaware of it, you don't know it's happening. And now you could be arguing with your neighbor over something that you don't even believe is true, but it's been implanted to now you think you believe it's true. They convince you of a truth that could be a lie. And you'll fight for it. What's that other saying about it's easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's why now when I talk to certain people and if the subject leans a certain way, the way they talk about it tells me whether I can talk to them or not. Because in my lifetime early on, I remember we could argue and be friends. Now all of a sudden it's like I hate you, you're stupid if you don't agree with me. That is mind control. And they're completely unaware of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you think someone that disagrees with you is just stupid, there's a problem with you, not them. I don't know about them, but the fact that you just think they're stupid, you can't accept that they think differently, they're dangerous if they think differently. This is not the America I grew up in. So anybody not recognizing this is happening, that's sleepwalking through life. Because we should be able to say anything. We should be able to argue about it. We should be able to debate about it. And people should be able to decide when they have all the information. Informed consent. That's medication, and it should be anything you believe in, anything you vote for. You should have all the information, and then you weigh your options based on having all the information. If all you have is this information, how can you possibly make a valid decision? And an objective decision, you can't. You've been steered, you've been manipulated, and now your vote is really not even, doesn't even count anymore. Yeah, I don't even have to take a side. I can recognize the problem. Nobody should be shut down. Everybody has their right, and you don't have any right to push what you believe on someone else, force someone else what you believe. My instincts make me go the other way when I see that. I don't even have to agree or disagree with your opinion. If you're forcing it on someone else, I already disagree with you. Even if I agree with your principle of what you're saying, if you're forcing it on someone else, I'm going to back the person that you're up against because they have a right to their opinion and their experience. That's just my instinct. Stand up for the little guy, so to speak, right? Stand up for the minority. Stand up for the person who doesn't have the voice. Why are you taking their voice? Why are you taking their opinion? Why are you taking their experience? We are all, I just said it earlier, we are all consciousness seeing this world through another perspective. Everybody's perspective is valid. And if your perspective gets you killed, okay, that's what happened. Then someone else can learn from that. But no, someone else can't force you because what they believe is right. Yeah, you have a right basically to kill yourself, if that makes any sense. Because if you really were serious in that way, nobody can stop you anyway. Not getting into suicide. I'm talking about doing harm to yourself, whatever, things you eat, medicine you take. You know, that's what I'm talking about. It's like not using experience in your life and someone else forcing what they think is true on you. Nobody has a right to do that. How can we possibly have a valid experience in this planet, in this world, in this whole experience of living, if we can't have our own choices of what's right and what's wrong? Because if everybody's over here and nobody's over here, how do we know if this is good or bad? You're not allowed to experience this. Oh, we already found out that's bad. Well, I want to find out for myself. You can't. I'll put you in prison. How does that sound to you guys? I'm going to put you in prison because you think this is wrong for me, but I want to experience for myself to prove this is wrong for me. Why are you blocking that? Maybe you're hiding something. My instincts say you're hiding something. Mr. Antomate before Miss Beaumont. Let me see if I can organize who the heck is showing here. All right. Hit mute, Mr. Aviles. Mr. Antomate.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
My question, I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on unconditional love and what that means, and then also if love itself has a place in the martial arts, practice of martial arts or Bagua as a philosophy or anything.
Okay, absolutely. Just the words themselves say everything about it. Unconditional is without conditions. I don't love you because you agree with me. I don't love you because you're my blood, my family. I don't love you because you're from my country. I don't love you because you're my child. I just love you. I don't love you because you do what I say. I don't love you because you make me feel good. I don't love you because whatever you can imagine, you give me things. I just love you. And if you truly love another with unconditional love, you would throw down your life for that person because your life's not more important than theirs. You would do everything in your power. You'll jump into raging waters to try to save them, and you might kill yourself in the process. Because what's first is your love for the other. Now, when you ask if it's in Bagua, the number one thing we talk about with partners is to work with each other, not against each other. I can love the terrorist who comes to harm me and my family. Can you? I'll hurt him if he tries to hurt me, but it doesn't change how I feel about him as a human being. I will protect myself with all I've got, all my might. I don't care. I'll hold nothing back, but I still love him. And if I can help him afterwards, I will. See, unconditional love is understanding that we are all one, but we're also living in theater. We're also playing a part, a role in life. And, you know, real self-defense is just, you don't do it out of hate. You don't do it out of anger. You do it out of love for yourself or your loved ones. And if I have to hurt someone else to stop them from hurting me or someone else, then so be it. But the ego doesn't have to be involved, and I don't have to hate that person. I will send them, call 911 if there's any way to save them if I hurt them. I can't control what people do. I can't control what people think, and I certainly can't control if they hate me. But I can control what's inside of me. So there's never that bad feeling. I don't care race, creed, color, sex, whatever it is. I don't have any bad feeling for anybody whatsoever. I just, obviously I have opinions of what people are doing is right or wrong. And when I think, going back to what I said earlier, when I think somebody is controlling someone else, it's not the person I don't love, it's the actions that that person is taking. A mother's unconditional love for a child will be no matter what that child does, that mother will cry if there's something harmful to them or to others or something bad happening to them. The mother will jump in front of a lion's, mouth in order to save that child. Is unconditional love. It goes beyond the fear of even dying. So I do believe that the highest level of martial arts is to get us back to recognize who and what we really are, to transcend this self of separate than others, and to actually experience one with all that is. That's why discover the ego and destroy the ego. Love goes right along with that. You want to combat fear? You combat it with love. And with love, we can stand up for everything we believe in. And then others who even have done their harm, and maybe, let's say, they change their mind and realize they've done wrong. You need to hold a grudge and hate them? No, you accept them, you bring them aboard. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's not complicated. We just make it complicated. Love is the ultimate sense inside that we all have, like it's the most natural thing, but our thinking gets in the way. Our thinking destroys it. Our separation from God, our separation from all that is why we hate, why we fear, why we live in everything else but the moment and feeling unconditional love. Miss Boma? Just unmute. You have to unmute.
I have several things that are going back to what was said earlier about an experience. One was that 2 weekends ago, I read from my book, which it talks about my great-grandfather. And the night before I read it, I dreamt I was with my great-grandfather asking all sorts of questions. Thought it was interesting because I've never dreamt about him and meeting him. He died a decade and a half before I was born. But And then the other thing I was thinking about was you mentioned about being a speck of nothing in the whole universe, that I was riding a camel in the Sahara Desert with all its ancient history and its hard survival life. And I did get a sense of eternity. I can't explain exactly what that was, but it was like me on this camel in this desert with all this space, and got a sense of not here and now in Englewood, New Jersey, but of all of history and where we are. We are a place in history. So we are not insignificant. We are in a place in history. And then the last thing I was remembering was that I think it was the early Greeks who didn't believe in censorship because they felt people should be exposed to make their own choices. But of course, they didn't have all the marketing that we have today and all the brainwashing. Life was simpler then. But censorship was like, no, you get the information, you make your own decision. Think for yourself, in other words. Anyway, those were my comments.
Well, thank you for that. And, I would say our system comes from that, from ancient Greece and Rome, and
Yeah.
and what was meant to be best has been manipulated, and corruption. This is the problem. That's why I said earlier, again, with martial arts, the goal of the practice is not about punching and kicking and beating others. It's about discovering your ego. And let's be blunt, our leaders are run by their ego. And this is not all that surprising, because who the heck would want to be president anyway? You have to have a pretty big ego to want to run the world. So that's the problem. That's really the problem, because you have people with the most ego who never have enough, and they're never satisfied. And that's the problem with the ego, is it's never satisfied. It will focus in the material world primarily. And in order for it to think it can be satisfied, it wants to control others into its way of thinking. In other words, pretty much like, I'm God by myself, not we're all God. I'm God by myself, so I need to make everybody the way I want for my life, my belief system. And so this is why there's no better training than, in my opinion, with my bias, martial arts, properly taught from the ground up. But I think instead we're getting the opposite. There's a lot of talk today about indoctrination, right? There's racism being put into the schools. It's the most ridiculous thing I can't even imagine. And I think a lot of people are waking up to it and realizing this is ridiculous, because the average person, the normal person, your neighbor, doesn't think this way. And it's like, people get along. And when there's tragedies, we help each other. So come on. Everybody's got to turn, and I actually think we should turn off and throw away our televisions and live in the moment. You want to talk about eternity? Eternity is now. The only moment that never stops is now. Tomorrow never comes. Yesterday doesn't exist, because it's now when you experience it. You can only do anything now. You can plan in the future, but you only can do it now. Even your planning is happening now. And then the rest is your imagination. And you can give direction, but you have to do it. And when you do it, it's always now. That's eternity, this moment. Who's got their hand up there? Mr. Atomate and Tomate. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Question?
yes, sir. I was just thinking to myself as you were talking about ego, and when I just come to think of people who I may engage with at times, who I kind of like internally sense that maybe they're operating from a place of ego, like, at least in my experience, I've come to realize that maybe some people have maybe malintentions from a place of ego, and then maybe other people don't have bad intentions, but they still operate from the ego. And I don't know, like sometimes it's people that I feel close to, right? And I think to myself, wow, I wish that they were more awake. And I don't know if it's my place to try to spark that at any moment, or like if it's like, sorry if this question is kind of not very concise, but just trying to share with you the thoughts that are in my head right now. But I don't know if I even asked you a question just now, but
I'll interpret what I think the question is, okay? Is that okay? Okay, so how do I help others? How do I lead others? I lead by example. I'm not a believer in, let's say, welfare. Do I think welfare shouldn't exist? No. But I think a lot of people take advantage of it, and I think it hurts people. It takes away purpose. We need drive. We need purpose. There are people who legitimately need help, and then there's people who don't, who take advantage. And then there's people who don't want to give opportunities to keep people down so that they are on welfare. Like, just that subject is a powerful one, actually. You know, I do believe in picking ourselves up and doing for ourselves. And I also believe that we are good enough, for the most part, to help those in need. We shouldn't have to be forced to help those in need. People will get together to help those in need. And then those in need can lift themselves up and no longer be in need because of examples around them. They learn how to do better. They learn how to pick themselves up. And then they're in a position to help others when the time comes, by choice, not by the end of a gun. Now, how can you help others? I already said my opinion, my own, this is a bias. Obviously, this is my experience, that getting involved in martial arts completely changed me from the inside out. Far beyond punching and kicking. I came to it for self-defense, and I ended up in just a complete different perspective of the universe, literally of our lives, and how we treat each other, and how we live, to live better. And so, by example, if you're living better and someone says, if somebody wants to be better and they see you as a good example, then they want to follow what you did. Just today, a patient was talking about her niece, who was about, what did she say, 8 or 9 years old. And the niece on the phone was so cute, asking her, because she looks up to this woman so much. She's a young woman, maybe 26, and she just looks up to her so much. You know, she loves her and looks up to her and wants to emulate her. So she starts asking her questions like, what would you do? What did you do with your day from the moment you woke up? What time did you wake up? When you were 10 years old, what were you doing? And it's like she wants to learn from that person because she wants to be like that person. It was one of the best examples I've ever seen of being a great example to others by living. The way you live, if you're happy, if you're healthy, if you treat people with love and respect, no matter what happens, you talk about people the right way instead of about them behind their back in a bad way. That other people want to be more like you. And then you say, well, what helped me become this way was my practice of martial arts, for example. A lot of people will lead someone to a religion, you know, to a church or something. Whatever it is, I'm just saying mine was martial arts, the actual sitting there and practicing through repetition and getting my mind, you know, very focused, because focused practice makes a focused life. What you do in the dojang is what you're going to do in your life, because it becomes a habit when you do it a lot. If you just practice to remember things, that is not going to change your life. You have to practice in the way where the whole thing becomes a meditation, and you actually discover who or what you really are. And none of this is theoretical, it's actually experiential, and it becomes knowing. And then you become an example just by living. The way you live, the way you treat people, automatically people want to do that way, okay? And I'm not saying for a moment that I'm perfect. You try to observe where you make mistakes and you try to improve on them all the time. That's conscious living. It's striving for perfection, never reaching it, striving for perfection. But every one of us is here because we have an ego. Just how well do you know you? In the martial arts practice done right, you'll get to know yourself better and better as the years go by. You read a good book, you see a good movie, you recommend it to people. It's the same kind of a thing. You can't make someone read a book that would help them with what you think is wrong with them, but you might lay it out there and just say, oh, it's such a good book, and then make someone curious. But they also have their own experience and their own drive. Do they want to change? Do they want to grow? And if they're not asking, it's very difficult. You know, unsolicited advice goes on deaf ears. Develop yourself to the highest level you can. Keep striving for perfection. And naturally, you will influence others to want to be more like you. And even if you only influence one, that's a heck of a lot better than none. Let's go to meditation.